John Horton.
And I'm Kyle Pierson.
And you're watching In the Spotlight. Today we are privileged to have in our studio with us the visual effects man for Evil Dead 1, Evil Dead 2, the illustrator for Chaosium's Call of the Cthulhu game, Tom Sullivan.
Thank you.
Hi.
How you doing?
Thanks for being on our show.
Okay, now you do FX for a lot of movies, don't you?
Well, I've gotten 3 under my belt so far.
What are those? Are Evil Deads?
The Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, and I did sculpting and some design work for The Fly Part 2. It'll be out soon.
Okay, how did you ever get into this? I mean...
Well, it's an interesting story. I always had an interest in artwork and dinosaurs and monsters and special effects in films. And I was up at Michigan State and I read an article about Sam Raimi and his, I forgot what it's called, the Organization for Filmmaking or something like that. And they were showing their Super 8 movies that they'd made before they started college and were charging money for it. It was a real clever idea. And I looked them up, and we kind of became, you know, friends and stuff, and I'd hang around. And at one point they were editing a movie and were doing sound effects at 4 in the morning and got kicked out of their apartment and decided to quit school. And Sam had been working on an idea for a script called Book of the Dead, and he decided with his partner Rob to raise money and try to make a film, and that became Evil Dead. And because they knew me and I'd made masks and things like that, and convinced them I could handle the special effects, went on to do that.
Okay, so but before this you were just working with making the mask and everything just as a hobby?
I had done some prosthetic makeup and just little bits on my own, you know, Planet of the Apes type things and gargoyles and werewolves and the standard experimentation of young people, and okay. It kind of went on from there.
Yeah. So actually you never went to any special schools for this, or?
No, there are schools now, but this would be back in 1977 when I was old, 6 years old. And you kind of learned out of books. There was a magazine called Cinemagic that was in its very early days for amateur filmmakers, and I got most of my information out of that and books on theatrical makeup. But that was all that was available then. Today, you can buy the secrets to about any movie, you know, off the rack.
Yeah, they're pretty much, the FX guys give you the answers and everything.
So you just got a big break and worked your way up from...
It was like winning the lottery. You know, your first film ends up being a kind of a cult classic and a pretty big hit. And it's been very, very good to me.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Would you have like any advice for any people just starting out on this?
Like me, for instance?
Well, yeah, there's any number of areas in special effects these days, from matte painting, which would be, if you just have the bottom floor of a building and you want it to look like a skyscraper, you can take a piece of glass and finish it up with art. That takes a very photographic approach to painting. There's special makeup effects, which is the prosthetic type of thing. Then there's special props. For example, saying on the Friday the 13th things, there's, guy gets lashed to a bed and some woman's tongues come out in a wrap around, that type of thing, and you're using cable controls. There's mechanics, sculpting, painting, design work, people with imaginations who can come up with unlimited amount of ideas on any given topic. It goes on and on. There's so many disciplines. That's why I love film, is from architecture to music to composition to painting. It's all in there. And find something and be good at it, but be open to other things.
Do you feel that effects have been overrunning movies, like the Nightmare on Elm Streets? They started out with they were really spooky and had effects to stress things, but when they got to 3 and 4, it was mostly effects, and they tried to come up with a story to fit with them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the flaws is in effects films. The story always has to come first. I mean, you look at Evil Dead and you go, what's he talking about? But for me, the story is what's really going to make the difference. Great effects don't really illuminate a film. The effects should illuminate the story, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's when you can't afford big stars, you can always afford somebody who can make a knife, you know, or arm rip off or something like that, or gouging out eyes and something, you know, easy to do. You know, ketchup still works in movies. And if you can't afford stars, we'll put special effects in. And unfortunately, some directors think, well, then we don't need a story, we don't need actors, all we need is gore. And then you get a whole bunch of films that end up on video. Real quick.
Yeah, with the MBA and everything, I understand that. Like with Evil Dead, I noticed you didn't go too overboard with that, but you had just enough that made it work and everything. But mainly the story should be in your mind the top thing.
Yeah, that's what will grab people and carry them along. And there's a term called suspension of disbelief, where if you've got magic happening or fantastic creatures appearing, you have to kind of create a situation where the audience will believe that no matter how implausible, you know, the Evil Dead or something, you set up a style and a technique and a tone and the story that people will go, well, that can work. You suspend your disbelief, and all of a sudden you're zipping along with the camera, and you don't want the people to get hurt, and you're laughing at the appropriate moments. But it's a hook to get people's entertainment values lowered, I guess.
Okay. I was wondering, do you pattern your style of FX after any particular FX director or anything?
Oh,
or do you have a favorite?
Dick Smith is, in my opinion, the greatest, and him and Rick Baker are incredible. And I don't really have a style that I pattern after, but I have an altitude of excellence that I try for. Unfortunately, you know, sometimes they have a little more time and better equipment, and of course a vast storehouse of knowledge that I'm working on still.
Yeah.
And but I'd say they're the best in the business, and Rob Bottin is excellent as well.
Are you let when they hire you to do a film? Do you get a broad range of whatever you want to do for effect? They say, I want to have a monster like this. You to make a monster, or do they want a basic pattern? You got to follow most of it.
It kind of varies. On the first Evil Dead film, the direction for me was kind of like, well, Sam, we can cheat this for the camera, you know? It's like we can show the knife going in the chest, or you can turn the guy's back and just, you know, pretend that it's going in, that type of thing. He said, oh no, let's go it in. Okay, well then give me 2 weeks and I'll come up with something. And well, how about tomorrow instead? And it kind of goes like that. It changes from film to film. On Evil Dead, so on the first film, it was whatever I could come up with. I pretty much got to rig it. I would explain to Sam the seams on, the pencil stabbing in the ankle seam. The seams are going to be running along the back of the leg, so you're going to want to shoot it from the side, that type of thing. So it would give its best angle on it. And I got to control things like that. On the second film, Sam had realized that creative control is really important to the end visual look, and we'd kind of lucked out on the first film. So he was much more specific, saying the creation of the deadite or ghosts or the book sequence. I got things spelled out to the second. And then we'd kind of experiment with that, and he'd see what it looked like. So it changes from director to director, but an effects person has to be ready to work with anybody.
Who decided how gory something should become? There's things when they get really gory. I mean, where do you guys come up with, what would be really sick for somebody is if we did this, or did you just say,
Ultimately, that should be with the director, because he's deciding the visual and emotional impact upon the audience. And something that's, incredibly gory at the beginning or has a lot of power to it. If you don't have something like that, like towards the end of the film, then, you know, there's that balance, and you kind of think, well, gee, I thought, you know, it was going to be a big build-up because they had this thing in the beginning. So then he's orchestrating this and trying to bring it to a big finale. On Evil Dead 1, that meltdown sequence, which is just churning in guts and blood and goo, had to be like that because we had gone through so much mayhem that how do you top that? And well, you have arms bursting out, throwing intestines into the audience, and
Good idea.
that was my idea, actually.
Where do you like get your stuff? Because I noticed, I read that in Evil Dead you resorted to using oatmeal for one sequence. Did you just
Well, that
make do
was
with?
we were using so many different things that I thought, oh, this will be funny, you know. And I thought, oh, you know, if you put some green food coloring in oatmeal, and I thinned it a little bit, and we blew it out a tube and had this cheap skeleton hand there. That, you know, it wasn't gonna. It happens at a point where that sequence is kind of slowing down. This is right before the arms burst out, and it's kind of holds on it for a second, and it's one of those things where it gives everybody a pause to think about what they're looking at, and they all go, "Is that oatmeal, or you know, what is that?" And you know, it's one of those things that you don't plan on, but ends up being a topic of conversation.
Yeah. Like, how would you get a job with a company? Do they come to you and ask for you to come on to and help film on it, or what?
Well, fortunately, that happened on the Fly Part 2. I got a call from the Wayless Company, and to do some design work. And I'd met them before, and got to tour their shop. But for somebody starting out, I would come up with a portfolio of things. You should know something about mold making, sculpting, different various materials, foam rubbers. They're using industrial grade gelatin these days for face masks. And there's artwork and maquettes, which are small sculpted designs of creatures or something. That type of thing is what they're looking for. If you can shoot a little bit on Super 8 or video that shows your creations in a dramatic context, that would be something to show. That'd be known as your reel. And your credits and all that. Mm-hmm. If you've done work for theatrical things, that works. Do makeup on Friends for Halloween, and have photographs of that. And you'd be amazed. There's also Fangoria holds makeup contests, other magazines do. And some friends of mine, Steve Wang and Matt Rose, came up with, I forgot what they called them, but some terrific, the Gould brothers or something like that. They came up with a couple of masks, and went to Rick Baker's shop, and hey, I was wondering about you guys. I saw your stuff in Fangoria, and they wound up sculpting on Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, cool. You work mainly with sculpting and mold making. What are those, and what's the difference between them?
Well, sculpting, got to know a lot about skeletons and various animals and anatomy and textures, and there's a lot of techniques and working with different materials. You use wet clay, water-based clay or oil-based, depending on, could be the size or object that you're going to be molding. And with mold making, that's the other end of the spectrum, and that's learning a lot about plaster and hydrocal and ultracal and fiberglass resins and any number of things that are incredibly toxic. I kind of, boy, it's scary actually, that end of it, because there's a lot of techniques. I mean, there's stuff, Cabasil, which is powdered glass, And you shouldn't be breathing that. You know, in some shops it's just flying around the floor, and people go home and track it on their carpets, and, you know, not good.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful, and I'm usually known as paranoid about that stuff. I wear masks and dust paper clothing and all that to keep it off me. And anyway, mold making is difficult, but if you can mold well, you've got a job.
Mm-hmm. How much could one expect in the field? Is pay or wages?
It really varies. On my own experiences with Evil Dead, when somebody comes to you and say, "Hey, do you want to make a movie?" Like most of us, we'd say, "Well, sure, yeah. How much do I have to pay you to start?" You know, and sometimes it's kind of similar to that. Sometimes the producer may be looking for hungry people who are more interested in a credit than being able to make car payments or pay rent or things like that, and they'll find them because you don't know. This film that you're going to start on may be a big hit. And other films, now that I'm established, I get some money. And that can range from, I'd say the low end would be $100 a day to $250, something like that, for a makeup person, a special effects person. If you're working big time in the union, it could be even more. And you know, it depends. If you're a Rick Baker, why then you're doing pretty well.
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot of responsibility, and they want his designs and his work, and he's also, you know, supplying he's a business, so he has a crew and an overhead for a shop and his expertise and all that. So there's quite a variety, but there are a lot of films being produced right now. Unfortunately, a lot on the low budget end, but still they need qualified people, and as Sam proved, you can go out and make your own movies as well. He did that in this area.
In the 85 minutes during which The Evil Dead, as it's called, drips blood on the screen, almost every conceivable horror is perpetrated. It was made for just $500,000 by 22-year-old Sam Raimi, with special effects by Tom Sullivan.
Okay, Evil Dead. What was it like working on that one?
Working on an Evil Dead film with Sam is a lot like being a character in one of his movies. It's it's really interesting, but it's grueling.
It set Tom off right from first minute of, he was the first guy that got severely picked on.
Enough budget? Yes, there was enough budget because we had Tom Sullivan.
It seemed logical to use you for Evil Dead. We had heard of some other people, random people, but it was a new field for us too, so you were leading the way as much as anything.
Tom was like the island, and we were the current that flowed around him. He was the rock.
And he was able to create an incredible amount of effects using very cheap materials.
Tom Sullivan, you're responsible for a very large part of the physical horror, and on the table here are heaped dreadful stumps and legs.
This is gross.
And distorted hands, and there's an eyeball here with an optic nerve dangling from it.
Tom Sullivan is an absolute genius. Michelangelo's got nothing on the man.
I mean, look, you know, and look, we should shut down. This is, if you want to have a really interesting documentary, is you have to go into Tom's life.
Gosh, you know, though, I'd really swap it all for Penny. I would. But bartering's part of the grieving process. I guess I'm still in it.
He's very full of ideas, and he loved movies like tremendously. So
his visuals still are extremely memorable and part of that whole franchise.
And when's the last time you were down in this basement?
It would have been the day before Thanksgiving, 1980. That was my last day of shooting.
I mean, his eye and his taste had a lot to do with the look of Evil Dead.
I just was blown away by his artwork. I was blown away by it. His enthusiasm was wonderful.
He was always there to make sure that we were okay, and he was our protector.
No, he's not. Sam shot a bunch of his early Super 8s here, of course.
This is it. Look at this. Wow.
You running?
Yeah. What does it say on there?
Book of the Dead, 5/24/80.
Scene 21, take 4, sound 133. Action.
You may recognize this from Evil Dead 1. There's a scene in which the first victim has become possessed, and she grabs a pencil and drives it into the ankle.
Yes, I remember that very vividly.
Grinds it around over and over again. And what I had done is make a mold of Betsy Baker's leg in that position, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a dowel rod to give it support. Anyway, inside the mold, I filled it up with foam latex, R&D foam. It's the company that makes it. And then you bake it in the oven, and then I painted it with acrylic paint. This is before I learned about rubber mask grease paint. And so you can see it's kind of cracked and everything. Fortunately, it was done within hours of painting it, so it looked nice and fresh. And then I made a split on the other side of the ankle. This side would be facing the camera, and put a balloon inside. And I had peeled out the foam latex so it would be very, very thin. And that's why she had to grind the pencil around, was we couldn't get the blood out. And, you know, it all came out this side.
What else do we have here?
Well, here's the gloves for, these burst out at the end of the meltdown sequence in Evil Dead 1. And I'm wearing them in the film, so that's my cameo in there. Oh. And I made them out of Playtex gloves and latex and cotton and chicken bones. And these are eye sockets to a Revell skull model plastic kit. They look like horns, so I just stuck them on.
Yeah.
And low budget, as I say, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Still does the trick. Still counts.
Well, here's the original Book of the Dead with the new pages for the sequel. This was in the first film, and it's illustrated by myself and has a number of disgusting artifacts. And I tried to get things like, here's the blank eyes, and
Yeah, the Evil Dead effect, as it's called nowadays.
Various things that appear in the film to give them. Here's an anatomy of the eyes, things like that.
Did you come up with all this arcane writing on your own as well?
Yes, I did. I just made it up as I went along. I didn't have time to come up with an actual text and then a code and all that.
Did you do the redrawings for the sequel? Because in the beginning of the sequel, they have, they have everything start writing down. Did you do that?
Yeah, that's what this is. These are the pencil drawings for it. Here's the Deadite. There's the Book of the Dead. These may not show up very well, but various creatures. There's the Kandar Castle up on the hill.
I understand you had a cameo in the end of that one as one of the soldiers at the castle.
No, I wasn't a soldier. I'm at the airport, and I'm in about 12 frames of the movie. You can just see me bending out. I'm loading luggage and stuff like that. At the end of the first film, there's a brief scene where a tongue comes out and snarls and all that. That had a stop-motion armature. This is a duplicate of the original.
Oh, okay. And the Book of the Dead, that's the main force, though, from both Evil Deads 1 and 2. It's the main benevolent.
Yeah, the pages from the Book of the Dead, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Pretty horrible.
Human.
Here's the dagger. In Evil Dead 1, this was just an aluminum blade. And in Evil Dead 2, I looked too cheap,
Yeah.
So I came up with this bony design, and it was actually supposed to represent the tail of a deadite. can't really tell, but and it doesn't end up, you know, nobody talks about it. I don't think I even told Sam about that, but it's one of my little inside stories to it.
Good trivia question for.
As I remember in the first one, I believe, when they jabbed it in someone and he had blood leaking out of the skeletal mouth out here. How'd you do that one?
One of my ideas again. I had a hole drilled in through here that came out the mouth, and then we had a plastic tube, and somebody would swallow some, a blood mixture of corn syrup, food coloring, and use red and blue. Don't use yellow, because it'll look too orange. And then just blow through it.
Oh.
That way you can monitor if you want a nice pulse, you know, like heartbeat. If you use pressured air or something, it just explodes and makes a big mess.
Okay, let's see what else. What is this exactly?
Yes.
Okay, well, this is a stop-motion armature. This is what's inside the deadite here, which appears at the end of Evil Dead 2. And these are metal plates that have a screw going through them, and it's clamped over a ball bearing. And the idea is for stop motion, where you can make tiny movements one little bit at a time, and then photograph each movement. And then it's like a cartoon, you know, when it's all played together, you get the illusion of movement. And there's a skeleton like this.
How long would it take to make a 10-minute clip?
Well, you have 24, at sound speed, you have 24 frames a second. So that would be 24 movements a second. And then 60 seconds to a minute times 10, so that could take...
So you'd be there quite a long time.
Quite a long time. On a really good day, you might get, well, depending on how complex the sequence would be. But on a good day, you could probably get 30 seconds of animation. If that's a long day and that's with one figure that isn't too complicated, like a spider would drive you nuts. Or like the Sinbad films or Jason the Argonauts, all those skeletons, Ray Harryhausen was getting about 10 to 15 frames a day. Or so he says, but you know, when you have 7 figures, 5 limbs apiece, and they're all doing something very specific, drive you nuts.
Yeah. And this is the deadite that the armature is in?
Yes,
that's
I
right.
remember that.
This moves. It has a jaw that opens and closes. The eyes can move, not that you'd really tell since they don't have pupils. There's armatures and arms. This is made out of foam latex, and all complete down to the tail. There's a aluminum wire down at the tail end here. The wings all flap, and you can't really tell, but these are the metal, I don't know what they're called, the ribs or struts to an umbrella. Because it's a structurally like a little girder, and it has little hinges kind of already built into it. So I just put a little miniature screw in there, and you're all set.
Where did you get the idea for this, the deadite?
Sam had a need for a thing called a deadite, which would be based on, actually this design is based on Ash's sister's makeup. She would be the Cheryl, who was trapped in the basement in the first film. And he also wanted it to look like an old witch type of thing. And you'll notice that the rubber deteriorates pretty fast. Sunlight affects it, and the oil on your fingers, and just the wear and tear.
So every time they make a sequel, and if they want the same creature, you'd have to go back and make an entirely new
this one got its head blown up at the end by Ash in a shotgun. But I have a mold of this, so if they wanted a similar creature, they could contact me. There's an interesting feature to this, that in the back of the head is a little slit, and you might see a little bit of metal there, but there's little screws. And around the screws is fishing line, and it travels over the hard skull, underneath the latex to various points on the cheeks and the eyes and the mouth down in here. And by tightening these screws, you actually pull back and can create expressions. And if you run Evil Dead 2 again and you freeze frame it on one of the side close-ups of the creature, you can see it smiling in one of the shots. And so it's worth it to go out and run it again and say, hey, I'm going to check this out.
Yeah, I think I'll probably do that.
All right.
What else is up here?
Well, here's If you will hold that, I'll demonstrate how this worked. This is in the beginning of Evil Dead 2. There's a sequence where the Book of the Dead flies out of a smog or a fog and comes alive, more or less. And these were attached by these to these stop-motion armatures here. They've been dismantled because I cannibalized it for that thing. And you can see, and there's a flexible rubber material.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, you could talk, and then the camera moved into the mouth and into a swirling vortex that I created, but they didn't shoot it right, so that's the way it goes. But out of the vortex hopped these ghosts, and these are getting real fragile because there's just aluminum wire for the armature in here.
I'm not gonna touch it.
And this gallops out. You just barely make these things out. Mm-hmm. And here's another one. And yeah, this one swoops down and then comes in for a close-up. And this was based on a Three Stooges thing where a parrot or something gets inside a skull and it's flying around and Shemp's going, oh, wow. A spook, a spook. You know? And anyway, yeah. Or Harley Davidson, I don't know.
Oh, jeez.
Here's a Henrietta's, oh, here's almost. This is Henrietta from Evil Dead 2, and this was sculpted by a talented fellow named Mike Tursick. Wow. And then I got to animate it. And there are worms wrapped around here, but they were stuck in her head. That's the main reason it was animated. And there's a hollow head here. That's what happens when you're possessed by the Evil Dead. Well, anyway, the worms would wriggle out, and once again, rent the film, and you can see the worms. They in there for about a fraction of a second, and you know, her head pops up through the ground very briefly in her first appearance, and then
they went to
the suit.
Is it lighting or is it more stuff you put on top of the faces? But here, I mean, on the screen they look a lot different than they do here because they look more
cheap,
groovy. Here, they look.
It is lighting, and it's in the context of a film, and a lot of this stuff was put in with blue screen as a composite technique, and it just all affects it, you know. And with the sound effects, it gives you a different feel to it. This would be the book that you first see right before we change it into this one. This is flying around and rotating, and then when it comes up to the camera, because I was shooting in stop motion, at one point I replaced it with this one, and this had a cardboard backing here with the eyes so that it resembled this a whole lot more, and it was also powdered up and painted. It's worn off at this point, but this one has a ball and socket armature inside it in the binding here. And also all the pages are two pieces of parchment glued over a aluminum wire. It was done by Brian Ray, my assistant on that film, who's now an effects person on his own. Mm-hmm. He's working on a film out in San Francisco right now. So, you know, if you start, I mean, he's quite a talented fellow. Anyway, this is a stop motion book. And then here's a prop book, slightly larger edition from the first one. And this is what we used in Evil Dead 2. And I made a bunch of these because they were getting thrown around and thrown into fires and things like that.
Whose idea was it to reconstruct the entire beginning, I mean, of the second one, that they reconstructed scenes from the first one?
Well, that would be Sam. They were actually going to reshoot it very faithful to the original film, and they just ran out of time, so they had to kind of make it up as they went along.
Is there? Let's see. I don't remember this one.
Oh, this is for a dinosaur project I'm working on, and this would be a little cable-controlled.
Oh yeah.
Or not cable-controlled, just rod puppet-controlled caterpillar. Yeah. It's for a dinosaur expedition, and this is one of the little things that inhabit the jungle.
This still needs to be painted though and everything.
Well, still painted, and that's just a rough.
And that's what this stuff.
Yeah.
This is a Tyrannosaurus skull. Once again, it's for a ball and socket armature. I've got the rest of the sculpture, but it's didn't quite survive the travel back from California. And has a jaw. Tried to make it anatomically as accurate as I could. There's lots of nice material on dinosaurs. And then this is a Camarasaurus skull. Isn't that right? That's right. Made out of foam rubber, and I would harden this with some resin and then sculpt over the final details. I like building things up from skulls because then the flesh looks like it's actually hanging like reality.
Yeah.
And this would be large enough for a hand puppet, so you could stick your arm up the neck. And there's a Diplodocus with the nose in the wrong spot. I wised up after I did this.
Oh, wow.
This is super sculpey. But this would be called a maquette. This is something that pick creatures that you like and do them up and mount them on a plaque that doesn't have paint all over it. And you can show it around to people and try to get jobs with it. Spent 10 months working on Evil Dead 2, 5.5 months on Evil Dead 1, about 6 months working on the Fly Part 2. These are very time-consuming things to do. You want to get them right. It's one of those things where you only have time really to get them right the first time. There's a lot of pressure and problems that you run into, so it generally takes a little bit more time. It's a funny thing from your original concept of how things are how you think they're going to work, and then the problems of actually shooting, and then there's always minute changes that the director and circumstances come up with that alter your plan a little bit, and that has a ripple effect on other parts of your design.
We go through that all the time here.
Yeah.
It's a show.
Oh, everything's a prototype, essentially, so you have to work out the bugs, and I follow the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. And that seems to work for me.
Yeah. Okay, Evil Dead. What was it like working on that one?
Working on an Evil Dead film with Sam is a lot like being a character in one of his movies. It's it's really interesting, but it's grueling. And that's pretty much the nature of filmmaking. Is you've got to be ready for long days and cruddy food, and it can even be thankless at times. And you get in the middle of this and going, why? I don't want to do this. I could be selling hamburgers or something, and, and eating regularly. And getting some sleep, and the tension is incredible because got people. Hey, we're spending money here at a rapid rate, and it takes you 3 months to come up with this thing. And well, but it's complicated and unique.
Yeah.
But it as the Three Stooges used to say, the pain goes away on payday, and also when you're in the movie theater and this has been behind you a couple months. It's pretty gratifying.
Yeah. What's the rumors on Evil Dead 1300 AD? I read about this one, this third sequel to the Evil Dead.
Yeah, what I'd heard was they were going to spend some time in 1300 AD and fight off lots of deadites and armies of horrible things, and that may have changed. I'm not real sure. But whatever Sam comes up with will be another roller coaster ride of screaming terror, I assure you.
Yeah, after the first two.
Yeah.
You pretty much know what to expect and everything.
Right.
Can you give us any insight on The Fly 2, or because it's not out yet, nobody wants to know about it? They don't want you to know.
Yeah, well, I'm sworn to secrecy, but I'll tell you, there's a neat monster in it. And I got to do a lot of sculpting on the head and the legs, and that's what they show the most of. So you can say, hey, I saw the guy who worked on that. And that was a much bigger film, much more expensive than the Evil Dead films, and big crews and all that. And I got to work with, I learned how to do things the right way, you know, instead of the kitchen sink way that I've been used to. And so it was a great learning experience.
I heard you had something about a local TV series that you were going to try put into syndication or something along those lines?
Yeah, I'm, well, I don't know about syndication, but for even public broadcasting, public access television, it's a science fiction adventure about a deep space mission that kind of takes a different tangent. And I'm trying to make a very positive statement about the future and how attitudes among humans can change, and there are no blasters, there's no space wars, there's no federation that's financing the space project. It's a different kind of world, but actually one which we could enjoy today. Now, the Evil Dead films, as much as I love them, aren't really my cup of tea. I'm much more of a fantasy, imagination kind of guy. The company I work for, Chaosium, produces role-playing games. And they have me do cover paintings, and as well as interior pen and ink illustrations. And this is one of them. This hasn't been published yet, but should be out sometime fairly soon.
And you've seen it here first.
Right, this is a premiere.
How about that?
And the assignment would be listed as something like 2 investigators, 1 male, 1 female, 1920s or something like that. And through a doorway comes a blue light with a mass of tentacles that's assaulting this couple. And then they pretty much leave it up to me, and I'll do a pencil drawing of this, usually what we call a thumbnail sketch, and they'll approve that, and then I'll go ahead and paint it. And they love everything I do.
Oh, cool. So what else we got here?
Well, here's some of the book covers that have come out. And with the books, these would be adventure manuals and other types of things. And here's my latest pride and joy. This is a field guide to Thulu monsters. Mm-hmm. And this has inside it 27 of the most frequently seen monsters. So if you see these, you'll know how to deal with them, you know, what their eating habits are, and how dangerous they are, and how to send them back into the evil dimension.
You can get that at Walden Books, can't you?
And these are available at Walden Books and game stores and hobby stores, things like that.
Okay. Most frequently, I've seen it at Walden Books.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. Checked a couple other places for it because I knew you were coming out here and everything, but I haven't been able to find it except at Walden.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. Let me show you some more paintings here. Here's...
Okay. All right. I recognize that one.
Yeah, this was the first painting I did for Chaosium.
What is this, like a temple to them? Or?
Yeah, this would be the city of, I think it's pronounced Relay or something, where Thulu dwells. It's sunk in the ocean, and here it has risen up, and some adventurers are going into the temple to probably certain doom.
Okay, how's it pronounced? Is it Cthulhu or Thulu?
Theoretically, you're not supposed to pronounce it at all, because if he hears it, he'll reach up through the earth and grab you.
Thanks a lot.
But I have heard any number of ways. Cthulu, Cthulu, Chulu, it goes on and on.
Oh, this doesn't look nice. Where is this? Is this like...
This is the 1980 Republican National Convention.
That's where I've seen that before.
Another Chaosium cover. That will be out. That's on the project I'm working on right now.
Well, so we got
It's like a meaner version of Little Shop of Horrors.
That'll be out later this year. These are painted in oils. And
do you like research old H.P. Lovecraft stories to get ideas, or do you just basically come up with
the ideas? There's one story called Pickman's Model, about an artist who had the ability to draw creatures as if he'd seen them, and that's the approach I've taken, where try to make them look more or less like portraits or realistic type of setting.
Is this our detective and from the first picture?
Well, the same two investigators, yeah. Just I give them slight different guises. This is a game box cover. That's why it's this shape. And this is the Marshall Library down in the town I live. I gave it a cameo. Here it's the Miskatonic University Annex. And there's monsters all around it and swarming a nearby church. And
oh, wow.
Here's a Shoggoth behind it.
A Shoggoth, okay.
Very, very deadly.
Oh, this looks like a different type.
Yeah. I've done a number of variety of things for Chaosium, and here's for King Arthur's Adventure. And here's a sterling knight with just a few dents in his armor.
I like the color contrast, man.
Thank you.
All the different colors blended in, perfect.
This is the asylum.
Oh, wow.
This is a inmate trying to escape, and a guard changed into a monster because it was a longer reach, I guess.
I wish I could draw a stick figure as good, man. I can't do anything.
Well, that's how it starts. Keep practicing.
Now that has got a lot of color.
Yeah, that may have a little glare problem.
Yeah.
But if you start over here, I try to tell a story with my paintings. And here you can see a strange crab-like vehicle, obviously made out of metal and mechanical. And out of that have come some explorers, some research scientists. And they've stumbled upon the body of a dinosaur here that's been eaten relatively freshly. And they see a strange bird, and this film crew is filming the bird. And over here we've got another guy checking out the throat of the dead dinosaur. And up behind him comes a Tyrannosaurus that's going to bite him in the canteen.
I noticed right here, this is kind of...
Oh, that's an interesting story. I had the original, and I closed it in a car door, and it mangled this area right up here. So, what do? I cut out around the trees and put the same colored paper behind it. So now it has a multi-layered effect.
It's a three-dimensional.
Three-dimensional, right.
I just noticed that. It's pretty cool.
Just had glasses.
And here's my last disgusting one.
Oh,
there we
this
go.
one. That'd make a good shirt. What do we got here? Like one of the lords or what?
Well, it's a team of explorers in a cave, and this green gas has come down, and they're all turning into spiders.
Ooh, not good.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I see now. With the, I was wondering what those were for a minute.
And he's not too happy about it. Another Chaosium cover that'll be out pretty soon.
And you've seen it all here first.
Yes.
Thank you once again, Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle.